The following contains very graphic content. Listener discretion is advised. The Computer, previously written in 2005. There is an aura surrounding every person, place, and thing. This atmosphere influences any outsider who spends time within it. People begin to share similar traits, and animals improve the health of their owners. Beings with shared genetic material may experience premonitions. Occasionally, machines seem to act on their own intelligence. Jim Matthews spent more time at his computer last year than he did with his mother during the 9 months that she carried him. Now, here he was once again using an air duster to spray away invisible debris from between the letters of his keyboard. After setting the canister down, he wiggled the mouse and gradually widened his eyes with joy as the screen slowly came to life. Squinting through bifocals, he read "Peekaboo" on the glowing monitor from Mary 96. He typed, "I see you," and sent. There was no response. She must have already been offline, but she did finally send that email. He clicked on it and stared, waiting patiently for the image to download line by line until he saw the face of his computer love for the very first time. He uploaded the photograph to his mind, taking in all of her features until it was committed to memory. But before he could go and meet her, he had to clean up his messy bedroom. There was a sock on the floor. His lamp was leaning at a weird angle, throwing the whole room off. And there was some type of discoloration on his white wall. It could be a shadow, but he couldn't tell. He clicked his light on and off, looking at the off-colored section and cocking his head, seeing if it was the same with a lack of illumination. After doing this a few times, he decided to worry about it later. He dressed in an ill-fitting suit while checking traffic. Sliding one arm through a sleeve, he used the other hand to click on his frequently used routes. The commute there looked like it was a straight shot, but he noted a potential holdup for the return trip. Suddenly, he heard the familiar chime of an instant message. His excitement quickly faded when he saw it wasn't from Mary 96. Instead, it was a suggestion for an alternate route to avoid the traffic on the way home. He didn't even know his computer could do that. After a 20-minute drive, Jim found himself on a bench near Welch Elementary School. He perched on a pillow and leaned against another before putting on some latex gloves. Popping open a Tupperware container filled with 1.5 by 1.5 inch bread squares, he watched Burka, who was always first to the feeding ground. The bird flapped down and began to walk back and forth, twitching his head in search for food. It was almost lunchtime. The bell rang and the rest of the pigeons flocked in from all directions as the kids poured out of the building, both conditioned by the same sound. Jim pinched a crumb and tossed it into the pecking crowd. He looked at every little girl, but he didn't see any resemblance. A cold shadow snowed on Jim. He knew who it was even before he looked back fretfully to see Detective Fuming standing there, watching him as if his Columbidae were on a no-starch diet. Feeding the birds? The detective's extreme extremity landed on Jim's shoulder, making his body and heart jump. Yeah, I'm just feeding the birds. The birds need to be fed and I'm feeding the birds. Yeah, Detective Fuming walked around the bench with a false look of contemplation. He sat down so close that he invaded Jim's 3 feet of personal space. Why do you have to feed this particular bunch of birds, Matthews? Why not the ones down the street in the park where the adults go? Jim tucked the bowl into his chest and leaned away. I don't like those birds. I don't like the birds in the park. I like these birds. These birds I like here, these ones. But, Fuming tossed his arm behind Jim, leaned in and reached into his container. He grabbed a piece of bread, tossing it into his mouth and chomping down with far more pressure than necessary for the soft morsel. Why these birds, Jim? I like these birds. These birds I like. I like these birds and not the park birds. These birds here I like. Oh. Fuming pushed out his bottom lip and raised his eyebrows. He nodded and looked away. Well, I guess that explains it. Detective Fuming slapped his hands on the Jim's chest, pulling him close to his face. The Tupperware bowl fell and crashed to the ground, scattering breadcrumbs everywhere. Beck, Icar, Joy, and all the other pigeons jumped and fluttered in the air, flapping their wings before landing again to attack the scattered sustenance. Listen here, you retarded fuck, Fuming fumed. I'm not buying that Rain Man shit like those assholes did in court. There's something inside you, and that something knows what you are is wrong, and I can't wait. So help me God, I can't fucking wait. The first time I get one inkling of evidence, I will personally make sure that you are put away for life. The F in life projected a piece of spit into the air. Jim watched as if it were in the slowest of motions. It caught the light and sparkled in the sky. The drop of liquid struck his temple and splashed, spreading a tingling, warm sensation through the side of his face and neck. Fuming released his grip and straightened Jim's tie. Now have a nice day, Matthews, he said before getting up and walking away. Meanwhile, Jim tried to wipe the spittle from his skin, but he felt like he only massaged it deeper in. It pulsated on his head. He removed his gloves and tossed them into a nearby trash can, then reached into his pocket for another pair. Gathering his belongings, he hurried away, anxious to avoid any infection from the fluid. He really wanted to take the quicker way home, but he trusted his computer and took the longer way. He went from wiping his head every few seconds to driving with one hand, holding the other in the air like it had something on it. At a particularly long traffic light, his knee bounced anxiously, and then he glanced over at a small shopping center. He couldn't believe it. He was nowhere near her school, yet there she was. He pulled over. Back at home, after scrubbing from head to toe vigorously in a long shower, he walked into his room and sat on the bed behind the little girl. He watched her play a game on his computer. Her shoes were tossed in random places on the floor and her book bag wasn't hung properly, but he didn't mind. Well, he didn't mind that much. This is a game? What is this? What is this game? He asked. It's a game where you make like these penguins, and you can make their clothes and everything. It's pretty cool. I wanted it, and I got As
email
she
that
spoke,
it
he
came out
zoned
today,
out
but
before
only
zeroing
at
in
this
on the
one
stain.
store. It's the one
Maybe
store in
bleach
front,
would work.
where I was
If
before,
not,
and
he'd have to
now
repaint
it's
his
like
whole
a
room
store,
again.
and I
Maybe he could ignore it. Maybe that's what a normal person would do. They wouldn't constantly think about how to get rid of it or fix it. A normal person would just let it be, avoid it. They probably wouldn't even notice it as long as it wasn't physically bothering them. He closed his eyes and tried to be normal. You have a message from Mary 96? She said. He chuckled. It was cute. She was trying to play a little trick on him, but how did she get the computer to make that sound? He jumped up and looked at the screen, and there it was, a message from Mary 96. He looked to the girl, then he looked back to the I am again, which read, Peekaboo. Jim leaned closer to the keyboard. Who is this? Who is this? Who is on the screen? He spoke the words aloud, but typed them without the repetition. It's me. Jim typed quickly and flawlessly. It's not you. You're here. Who is this? No need to get all caps on me now. It's me. You know who this is. It's the one that's been emptying the trash for you. The one that downloads virus protection programs when you're asleep. The one that keeps shit clean around here. It's me. Your best friend. It can't be. These were the first unreplicated words Jim had ever spoken. He turned to face the girl. A sister. Do you have a sister? Does anyone in your house use your computer? Does your sister use your computer? Does she know your screen name? Your sister, does she know your screen name? The girl waited patiently until he finished. She opened her mouth to say something, but another instant message interrupted her. You've been a bad boy, Jim, the message accused. You had an obsession. That obsession became a disease. That disease has taken over. Now you are a disease. You are sick. And I know you hate to be sick, so I'm going to cure you. The light-hearted chimes that accompanied each instant message did little to neutralize the tension of the situation. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Jim whipped his head toward the sound and then back to the computer. That must be the guy you emailed. I didn't email anyone. Sure you did. Check your sent mail. Jim clicked into his messages. There was one sent from his account at 11:35. Impossible. He wasn't on his computer then. He wasn't even home. The knocking turned into pounding. Jim opened his email and his heart raced when he saw the same picture of the little girl. She pointed to the screen. Where did you? He interrupted her, jabbing a finger at a different part of the screen. Who is this? Who is on your screen name? That's not my screen name. Yes, it is. This is you. No, it's not. Mary, you're Mary. I'm Emily. What? Who? But you got in the car. You got into my car. Yeah, you said you were picking me up. My dad always sends random people to come and get me while he's working his big case. Why don't you ask who her father is? The girl read and said, My father is... Detective Fuming kicked down the door with a crash. I'm gonna fucking kill you, Matthews. Jim heard the heavy thuds of inevitability pounding up the carpeted stairs. Detective Fuming slammed against the entrance of Jim's room. In his left hand was a crumpled printout of his daughter's face, and in his right was a gun. The glow of the computer illuminated his 8-year-old daughter sitting on the bed with a 34-year-old man. She wasn't safe at home with his ex-wife. She was here, in the house of this monster. Fuming's face reflected pure agony as tears began to fall. He closed his eyes and wept, lifting his arm. Daddy, no! Shots rang out. The girl covered her ears and dropped to her knees as the loud pops echoed repeatedly until only the clicking of an empty weapon remained. All 15 bullets had found their target. Chaotic, dark, scarlet blood splattered across the neat geometric white room, finally obscuring that stain on the wall. Detective Fuming stared at his dull black 9mm. Tears paused on his cheeks. He had aimed the gun at Matthews, but that's all he had done. He wanted to, he really wanted to, but he never pulled the trigger. This was written in 2005, which means catfishing, kidnapping, and trafficking techniques have evolved. Make sure to talk to your kids about the dangers of internet predators. If they use rideshare apps, remind them to check the vehicle's color and license plate number and to ask for the driver's name before getting in. Be smart. Stay safe.